Hello everyone. Tonight we are going to be reading in Jeremiah chapter 52, starting with verse 1. It says, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Lebanon. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiachin had done. Surely, because of the anger of the Lord, things came to such a pass in Jerusalem and Judah that he cast them out from his presence. And from there, I want to go to 2 Kings chapter 24. So when I read this, I read over the whole thing, and then I kind of was like, who's Zedekiah? And then who was Jehoiachin? And so with the 2 Kings, chapter 24, verse 17. So 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 8 says, Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Neshitah, the daughter of Elianethah of Jerusalem. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up to Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to the city while his servants were besieging it. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, gave himself up to the king of Babylon himself, and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his palace officials. The king of Babylon took him prisoner in the 8th year of his reign, and carried off all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold in the temple of the Lord, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made, as the Lord had foretold. He carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen, and all the smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, the king's mother, the king's wives, his officials, and the chief men of the land. He took into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon all the men of valor, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the smiths 1,000, all of them strong and fit for war. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, Jehoiachin's uncle, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And that just kind of repeats what it already said. And so I noticed that. And then also, I think in a couple of verses before here, it says that Jehoiakim was reigning first. So Jehoiakim was reigning first before Jehoiachin, and he was taken over. And so then Jehoiachin ended up being king next. And then Babylon came in again, took Jehoiachin, and then he made Zedekiah king of Israel. Now, I don't know if he made Jehoiachin king of Israel, because it doesn't say that. But he obviously did kind of come in and capture Israel once. And that's when Jehoiachin became king. I thought to myself, why did Zedekiah rebel? So I was questioning that. And then so I went to 2 Chronicles chapter 36. So 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 11. And it says, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, his God. He did not humble himself before Jeremiah the prophet, who spoke from the mouth of the Lord. He also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who had made him swear by God. He stiffened his neck and hardened his heart against turning to the Lord, the God of Israel. All the leading priests and the people likewise were exceedingly unfaithful, following all the abominations of the nations, and they polluted the house of the Lord, which he had hallowed in Jerusalem. The Lord, the God of their fathers, sent persistently to them by his messengers, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. But they kept mocking the messengers of God, despising his words and scoffing at his prophets, till the wrath of the Lord rose against his people, till there was no remedy. Therefore he brought up against them the king of the Chaldeans, who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary, and had no compassion on young man or virgin, old man or aged. He gave them all into his hand, and all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes. All these he brought to Babylon, and they burned the house of God, and broke down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all its places with fire, and destroyed all its precious vessels. He took into exile in Babylon those who had escaped from the sword, and they became servants to him and to his sons until the establishment of the kingdom of Persia, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed its Sabbaths, all the day that it lay desolate to keep Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. And then I want to go back to Jeremiah 52. And if anybody's read this story, you already know that Zedekiah was taken captive, and then his sons were taken, and his sons and whoever else was important were slain in front of him, and then his eyes were gouged out. And this was the last king of Israel before Babylon took over. And then I want to read in Jeremiah chapter 52, I want to read verse 31. It says, "And in the 37th year of the captivity of Jehoiachin," this is the king before Zedekiah. Zedekiah was this man's uncle. "In the 12th month, on the 25th day of the month, Mordecai, king of Babylon, in the year that he became king, lifted up the head of Jehoiachin, king of Judah, and brought him out of prison. And he spoke kindly to him, and gave him a seat above the seats of the kings who were with him in Babylon. So Jehoiachin put off his prison garments, and every day of his life he dined regularly at the king's table. As for his allowance, a regular allowance was given him by the king according to his daily need, until the end of his death, as long as he lived." And so I had read the whole chapter 52, and those are the two parts that stuck out to me. Zedekiah becoming king and rebelling against the king of Babylon. And then here in the end, where Jehoiachin, the king before Zedekiah, was brought out of prison to sit and eat at the king's table. And I just noticed those two. So I had to go back and figure out who these people were and what the backstory was. And so, seeing that, I think it was Jehoiakim who was king first, after all the other kings. And then he was taken by the king of Babylon. I don't know if he was killed or if he was enslaved, but then Jehoiachin became king, and he did what was wrong in the sight of the Lord, but in the end, he was still lifted up to be sat at the king's table and to eat with the king and be given an allowance. And then Zedekiah was not given that same favor, And so in here, I don't believe that Nebuchadnezzar made Jehoiachin king. I think that he just rose up because he was, I guess, next in line. And so I just saw here, the favor that God had to one, and then the favor that he didn't show to the other, And the fact that God was giving Zedekiah and the rest of the people there an opportunity. He gave them an opportunity to do right. Babylon came in 3 separate times. First for King Jehoiakim, second for King Jehoiachin, and then third for Zedekiah. There's 3 different times that I went back and read. I don't know if there's anything before that, but 3 separate times that Babylon came in and essentially took over. So it was just time and time again being given the opportunity to do right. And then because the king rebelled, because the people rebelled, because, nobody wanted to listen to the prophets, to Jeremiah, they ended up ultimately coming to what they came to, but it was real specific for me for Zedekiah, just seeing that opportunity being there, that second chance, and he was older than Jehoiachin. And actually, when I was reading, there's two different places where I found where Jehoiachin was mentioned, and I think the other one was 2 Chronicles 36:9, and in that one it says Jehoiachin was 8 years old when he started his reign, but that's actually a typo. So I found that out. It says it in like the bottom where it's got like the little letters. So for those of us who maybe thought that an 8-year-old actually reigned in Israel, it didn't happen. He was 18 years old. So it's a typo in there. Huh?
Pretty sure I heard that before.
Yeah. So, but that was what was really like just sticking out to me, like that second chance, that opportunity to do right, and they didn't do right.
How does that apply to today, you think?
I mean, I think it applies to anybody who right now is not following God, who knows God and has the opportunity to follow God and to listen and obey His voice, and they're like actively choosing not to. Or when the word of God comes, like the prophet Jeremiah, when the word of God comes, they hear it, but it falls on deaf ears, and they don't follow through with what they're hearing, or they just reject it because they're so in their flesh that they like are just lacking the understanding, or just like they're so detached from God that they forgot or don't remember that God is the one they're supposed to be serving, and that this life is short, and that at some point your time is going to come and you're either going to be with God or be without God. And it's when you forget that part, I think, that's when you really start to be led by your flesh more. Is when you forget that your whole purpose here on earth is to follow the Lord and obey God. Because if you lose sight of God and just heaven, if you lose sight of God, then that's when you start to just be wayward and you're just going about and you're not like focusing.
The one thing that we know, because we've gone over this so much, is that the Lord told them through Jeremiah, you are going into exile.
Yeah.
Okay? He told them to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he even said there was punishment for the people that didn't go. Yeah. Right? Now, if I remember correctly, this is vague, but they did leave people, because it said that they carted off all like the important people and left the poor people behind. Mm-hmm. So there were people that they left. Those people didn't choose to stay. They left them there. And then didn't somebody set somebody up as king at the time, leave them there in charge? Did that happen?
I think that's what I was actually looking.
Is that these people here what I'm getting at is that if they were still in this time where God said, this is what's going to happen and this is what I want you to do, right? Them being made king did not negate the fact that they should go along with what God was doing, if you can understand what I'm saying. Like, even if God said, or the king, God allowed Nebuchadnezzar to be the one that was deciding stuff. Okay, he decided who went to Babylon and who stayed. And then he set up some type of hierarchy, government, to be in control of that place, because he wasn't going to be there. He's going to be in Babylon. So it would have behooved the person in charge not to buck the system. What I'm saying. Because God did this.
Yeah.
This wasn't Nebuchadnezzar doing it. This was God doing it. Mm-hmm. God had already said, this is what's going to happen, right? I guess you'd have to do a lot more connecting and digging, but what they were doing was bucking the system that God was, instead of seizing the opportunity, like what you're saying, or in connection with what you're saying, instead of seizing the opportunity to walk in obedience to what God was saying, they were trying to fulfill the desires of their flesh. Mm. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, how Zedekiah felt that he could rebel, I don't know. Like, what power did he think he had? I'm not sure. But he thought he got full of himself, I'm guessing. Thought he had some kind of power and decided he was going to buck what God had already set up. And maybe he didn't believe, like the people didn't want to believe what Jeremiah said. I don't know. That's why I guess I'd be curious as to know where, if this was in the 70-year reign or 70-year span of time.
What, the part with Zedekiah? I don't think it was. So I went back to the beginning of the book where it shows like the contents and everything. And it shows that Jeremiah starts prophesying under Josiah. So it goes Josiah, Joachim, Jehoiachin, and then Zedekiah. And then it says he prophesies after the fall of Jerusalem. So I think that here, hold on. It says the bad fig, Zedekiah, and the judgment to come. He prophesies the 70-year captivity, the fall of Babylon, and the destruction of the temple. So I think that if he's prophesying the 70-year, that means it didn't start yet.
Oh, you mean before?
So if he was prophesying it, here it shows in chapter 21 to whatever this is, chapter 21, I think.
Well, that
39.
just tells you what the chapters cover. You still have to look at the order, because like even though these chapters are in this order, it doesn't mean that these events are in that order. So you have to go back and look at the chronological. Because that's how Ezra is.
That's true.
Ezra has they have stuff in the chapters, but it's really weird because the stuff in the later chapter happened before, so the timeline is not exactly the same. But anyway, if that be the case, and I guess I'll have to do my own due diligence, but for me, that's like, if God said this is what it's going to be, then you need to be following along with whatever it was that God said. Like, you don't need to be trying to do anything. Again, it goes back to hearing the Holy Spirit. So to relate it to like now, I don't know if God were to say, I mean, I don't know how you could, anything that God says this is about to happen and this is what I want you to do. Okay? It ain't something you're going to like, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to do this during this time period and just chill out a minute because I know the plans I have for you. That's what he said. Stay right there. Okay? And do this because I know what I'm doing. All right? So I don't know if you get put up, say for instance, some people they were going to go in one direction as far as education and schooling and learning and career and all that kind of stuff. And God said, wait, I'm going to put you over here for a second.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Just be faithful where you are right here. Okay? I mean, the best person I could add, the most recent was Rachel, right? Rachel was going to cosmetology. I don't know if she heard the Lord say, now I'm not quite sure how that happened. But if God said, okay, I want you to focus on the store right now. Don't worry about cosmetology. Be right here. Right? Because I know what I'm doing. So it's important for Rachel, because she knows God said that, right? Rachel needs to be faithful. Like 100% faith. And everything that she goes through, God already knew that she was going to go through that. So it's like, so the people in charge over her, right? Whatever it is that's happening, God already knew this was what's going to happen. But he said, be faithful right here. Pray for the prosperity of this place I put you in. Build homes. You know what I'm saying? Be productive is what he was telling them. Be productive right here. And then after so much time is up, I'm going to get you do this and restore and all this kind of stuff. So, and using this as an example, Rachel only needed somewhere in that time start thinking, well, I'm going to do something else. Like she doesn't need to do that. And with I'm just using her as an example, but with anybody else, you don't do that. All right, Lord, this is what's happening right now. How am I supposed to handle it? Something's going on I don't really like. How am I supposed to handle that? You stay faithful to the Lord. And then when the time is done, then he's going to work everything out. Restore you, reward you, whatever it will be. But to me, it's like they didn't do that. That's if the timeline is in there, right? I mean, I already said they did evil in the sight of God, but you stay faithful where God has put you even under the rulership that the Lord put you under for that time.